Hey guys, Bix Weir, roaddoer.com. I have the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Clif High on the line. Clif, it's lovely to see you on this in these crazy times.
Yeah, I'm glad to be seen in these crazy times.
True. I mean, there's many reasons.
The alternative,
yeah. There's many reasons for you. Today, I want to talk about silver and kind of past, present, future. Kind of, it just feels different now. You've heard it before,
correct. But you're correct. We can feel it in our veins. Ha ha ha. Right.
Silver in the veins.
Right.
Absolutely. So first I'd like to talk a little bit about how we got here. As far as silver was used as money like 2,500 years ago by Turkey, and at least we've got records going way back. Okay, so if we were to assume that the counting of years that we're presented with is accurate, which I would dispute, but nonetheless, we have records of people using, records of every civilization that you can name now that we can recognize as a civilization using silver. So the Athenian empires, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, we see it all the way back into the Bronze Age. And I am personally, after doing a lot of research, convinced that it was a failure of two silver mines that collapsed the Bronze Age civilization, because these two silver mines were the vehicle for all of the trading of all of the tin and copper that was being mined within Central Europe. And when they started polluting the silver, this particular group in Europe basically collapsed the whole civilization because they were running out of silver. The mines went bad, and they started doing what the bad guys do all the time, which is, the pollution of it, right? And it collapsed. So as far as I know, it goes back to at least the end of the Bronze Age, which we know was 1177 BC. Wow. So basically, we're still dealing with the same criminals rigging the market for silver for the same reasons. It was used as money. Oh my God!
You think that humanity would be over this by now?
you would think, but I am very hopeful that with the amount of information that we are sharing with people and getting it out there, that people can take deeper dives into what silver is and how it has been, number one, controlled, but used as money and as currency. I mean, gold has been used as a store of value for a long, long time, but I don't think it's been used as a currency, as in you can go down to your local shop and use it quite as much as silver has everywhere, in every at least people we know. Since the use of money, it's been silver. And then the demonetization of silver was, I think it started, it started again in the 1800s, mid 1800s with the Opium Wars, and the UK trying to get some of the silver back that they were paying for all their silks and spices and all that. So
don't forget our Civil War, because the Brits were paying out lots of silver for our cotton, and they didn't like that. So they established the Dixie banks and tried to convince everybody in the central cotton growing area of the US, all the way up into the Ohio River Valley and all the way over to Texas and all the way over to the East Coast, to take paper in lieu of silver. And that's why that was the collapse of the Dixie banks and the loss of the Dixie dollars. And then it initiated our Civil War too.
And then we have the crime of 1872, where they basically took the dollar out of mintage, or the silver dollar out of mintage, and then wanted to go to a gold standard, I guess, because the bankers had all the gold, they can control that. And then, it goes to like 1900, the official change to a gold standard. And then 1913 with the Fed, and then 1965 when they took silver out of circulation, first time in I would say since the beginning of man. It didn't stop in other places, but the U.S. took it out of circulation in 1965, and now nobody has silver as money because of these same people, the same criminal banksters, the bug, the bad guys, the deep state, whatever you want to call them. They don't want us to have silver.
Correct. And there's, and when they tried putting us on gold, that did not last long, because it was the ratio of the Federal Reserve dollars to gold, and the fact that no one would accept the Federal Reserve dollars, that caused the stock market crash in the early 1900s, like 1914 or whenever, when they shut it down for 8 months, right? And then it took them a number of years later with severe pressure in order to get people to accept the paper in lieu of the gold and silver dollars. And so now, if we were to look at and actually, if you look at it in an interesting way, the $20 gold piece was the circulating money it was the equivalent of our like $100 bill. Okay. It was the largest denomination in circulation for a long period of time, right up till the grab in 1933. And if we look at that $20 gold piece today, what do we have? We have, of course, massive signs of inflation relative to the Federal Reserve dollars. So they started having to remove the $20 gold piece from circulation in the late 1920s. They discovered that they needed to have that done. And it took them like 6 or 7 years through the bond crisis in the 1930s to get that to happen. Now they're trying something very similar, and we have concurrently the same kind of conditions. We've got a commercial real estate crash that's beginning now. We've got a bond crisis that's in process now. And we've got a severe metals crisis now being headed by the crisis in silver that has reached extreme proportions in terms of the number of industries and people that are affected by rising silver prices. It's going to be catastrophic. So we're going to go through a bad period. We will either survive the bad period or not. If we don't survive the bad period, then there won't be civilization as we understand it now. Okay, because during this bad period, we'll have an ice age descend on us, and that will aggravate everything fantastically, like orders of magnitude. And so if we don't survive the ice age, we'll go into basically tribal groups that will probably trade among themselves and between the tribes in some kind of a bimetallic or trimetallic, as well as goods-based system, because goods will be very short supply, especially here in North America, because the manufacturing base is no longer here. So now on the other side of that is that we're going to go through this really rough period. The ice age is going to descend on us, and maybe our inventiveness will carry us out of this and preserve, although in an altered form, civilization. This has yet to be determined, and it's going to be determined by us. Now, so you and I can't do it, dude. We got to get everybody else on board.
Hey, we're part of the people who do it. Right. So in that scenario, I assume if we invent our way out of it, we're talking the use of cryptos alongside of gold and silver as money, as a means of exchange. I mean, the use case in cryptos is unlimited, if you ask me. But do you see, if we do go into that ice age and we are cut off into tribes, no longer working together, aren't going to invent our way out of this, is that the end of cryptos?
Sure. Absolutely. You're talking the other side of Mad Max in that situation. You're right. You're talking the Iceman here in Washington State, somebody putting a backpack on their back and walking to warmer climate in California, and maybe that person might walk out of here 6 or 8 or 10 years from now, and that would be maybe the last sign of civilization. That person would take it out with them, and then as humans move back into the area, it would be tribes moving back in that did not ever live through what you and I call civilization, right? Mm-hmm. So we're at the precipice there. In the area I live in, literally the ground underneath my feet had a glacier on it that was sufficient to compress sand and clay into what is locally known as subsoil concrete, because it takes a jackhammer to get into it, right? And so I expect that we may have glaciation to a great extent, although not necessarily duplicating exactly the Laurentian ice sheet, right? But nonetheless, glaciation that will separate us and put a severe burden on us either way. Now, as I say, it's a toss-up at the moment whether civilization is going to survive. I think we're inventive. I think we can pull through, but we're going to go through. Critical goods are becoming extremely expensive. I'm talking medical goods, right? These kind of things at this point. But pretty soon it'll be everything going into that kind of a state, and it will put a great deal of pressure on us. In my opinion, We can work our way out of this, but even in working our way out of this, there's going to be a great deal of disruption on the order of the same kind of thing that one might see at the collapse of empire. So I keep referencing the collapse of the Bronze Age because that was a collapse of civilization. Since then, we've only had collapses of empire. So I'm offering a view here that says we will either have a collapse of civilization or we will have a collapse of empire. Neither is going to be fun to go through, but one is survivable.
So the empire meaning the collapse of our controllers.
Correct.
But we invent new systems and new ways to deal with the inevitable of, we're going to have an ice age that changes. I mean, I think from what you've said and what I've studied, it would take up a chunk of the United States, in the northern part.
That's correct. That's still to be determined as to whether
Right.
glaciation is going to hit us and where and how much, because we don't know what level of minimum we're getting into, and you can't predict these things yet from this side of the minimum, right? So it may be a very long minimum. It might just be a very short one with minimal glaciation just appearing on a few peaks in the Tetons and the Rockies and so on, right? Or it could be valley filling, could fill up giant valleys like the Ohio River Valley, the Red River valleys in the far north. We don't know yet, but that's a long range problem. Once the ice starts coming in, we'll figure it out pretty quick because that will shift population within only a number of years. So the expectation is that if you were on a glaciation point where a glacier is forming, you might see the glacier form this year in the form of a lake that just does not unfreeze in summer. And then the next year it's covered up by snow, but you'll be moving in that third year because there will be so much accumulation of snow and ice that it will literally force you away from that area. In spite of all your efforts to deny it, you'll see that pile of snow that was on top of the lake is now reaching so high that you've got to tilt your neck back to see it. The glaciers grow very, very, very fast. They grow and compress, grow and compress. So we had a situation where Lake Tahoe this year had 50 feet of snow in a single storm. Okay, where we had a storm that was so large up here that it washed away access to the port in Vancouver. So, and it destroyed a whole valley in terms of roads and all of this kind of infrastructure. Our civilization does not have the money, the silver, and the healthy population to repair such damage on an annual basis.
Right.
Therefore, we will have to rapidly adjust as we go forward. Medical malfeasance that we're in now, this will also impact our thinking about where and what becomes sustainable under the developing conditions.
Let me, first of all, I just read this morning that Canada is shutting the border for goods because of to me, it says everybody's kind of hunkering down saying, I'm going to keep my stuff. But at the same time, I look at, for example, silver mines in Canada, in Idaho, in Washington. And silver mines tend to be concentrated in certain areas. I think they'd be glaciated over, and you wouldn't even be able to get silver. But would you have the same demand in it? If the population cuts down.
Yeah. There's the thing. Everything has to be. Also, all analysts need to reframe the base from which they are doing their analysis, right? So if you're analyzing the commercial real estate market, or the how many cows do we grow market, or how many ships we're going to be moving across the ocean market, all of these kind of things, whatever, you have to understand that maybe we'll lose 1 billion people. We just don't know. So they remove other people from the workforce just caring for them, right? Yep. And so we're there now. This is occurring now. Right. And it's going to have this cascading effect on all of us relative to how we see and predict what may happen in the future. So you're correct. There will be a decreased demand as a result of the population falling, and there will be a decreased demand result of the population not growing as fast because of the fertility issues that will be residual. But there will be that will be brief, okay, within a very short period of time, all right, as a result of what's occurred now. But on the other, and also we have to understand that there's going to be an increased demand for silver in the medical world, because we're going to have so many people that are going to be so disabled as a result of this medical malfeasance that will be needing treatments, and we will no longer be receptive to seeking those treatments through the allopathic system that existed that gave us this medical malfeasance. Mm-hmm. So big pharma, the entire regulation, FDA, any of these people, they've lost all their credibility, and who's going to willingly go to a hospital or even take the advice? Breakdown of the systemic level of breakdown was bound to occur. Jean Baudrillard discussed it in the 1920s that we would, once he understood systems and why Marxism was doomed, because it was focused on objects. But it was inevitable that because we did not coordinate and we allowed it to just develop in a particular way, that our system of systems would come along and we'd have all these systems glom on to some systems that acted as vehicles but were inherently weak. And when they break, they sever the link that supports all these other systems, many of which cannot be self-sustaining. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to get to this level of breakdown. As I say, the question now remains, will we break down civilization to a certain point and then recover? I think so. That's been our experience in humanity in the past, although we've broken it down way deep. Mm-hmm. So, this is something we really have to consider as to how harsh it's going to be and how deep in the problem we're going to end up getting. But some things like the silver, it's just really strange now. Certain information that's coming out about the electrical mysteries in silver. So I've recently come across a guy who says, okay, so there's silver 107, isotope 107, and there's silver 109. And here's a funniness, okay? Even in natively occurring electrum, which is a natural silver alloy, where it seems that is the best expression for the ratio of 107 to 109 at 51 point something to 48 point something, we have an electrical mystery. And that is that there's missing something in the analysis for this naturally occurring silver when those two elements are there. So he says if you put silver 107 with silver 109 in basically any ratio and then examine them electrically, you will find that your silver 107 is as you put it in there, but the silver 109 is not. So if you were to put in 51% and 49%, 51% 107, 49% 109, and then just make them into an alloy, melt them together and put them together, and then let them cool, and then do an electrical analysis on that silver, and he's got sophisticated equipment stuff. He says you find that you have the 51% of the silver 107 isotope that you put in there, but you have less than the 48% but the weight hasn't changed, the gram molecular distribution hasn't changed, but electrically something disappears when you do that. And he says if you separate them, and you have to go to some trouble to do that, he says you end up with 51% and 49%. So together they form this weird little silver mystery.
And I talked to Jenny about this last week, I have for a long time thought silver was going to be part of the new electrics. As in, I didn't know, you had taught me that long ago, but to me, it just felt like, and everything was pointing to I wouldn't call it free energy, but some kind of an energy device that people could, like maybe perpetual energy, or I don't know what you'd call it, but it would be so much better than this, what we do currently, that it would allow people on an individual basis to generate their own power.
I think silver is a key to that. I don't know about the free energy, and really that's not necessary. All we need to get is like 2% over unity. And so if you've got a device that just gives you 2% more juice than you put into it, then you can combine as many of those devices as you need to produce as much energy as you need. And it need not be any more efficient than that. And in fact, we could cure all of our energy needs if we only raised the efficiency of diesel engines by 1%. then humanity would never, ever, ever suffer any kind of energy problems at all, because diesel is so key to all of our energy now. We would basically, just by increasing the efficiency, that is the way they burn them and the amount of energy they get out of that diesel, if we increase it 1%, we would double the amount of energy available to humanity.
See, that stuff like that makes me think that they're doing it on purpose. They're
Oh yeah. We have legislative evidence of this.
Yeah.
In fact, look at the machinations they put Volkswagen and all these people through on all this weird pollution stuff over their engines, and we're not allowing them to run in the United States. Same thing with a bunch of engines in China and Japan. Now, it is true you get a lot more pollution out of these things, but they don't address the pollution issue. They do it legislatively and have a system that encourages these. So we get the behavior, we incentivize. Our laws are incentivizing criminal behavior. Now that the civilization is collapsing, the criminals are going to be exposed. Hopefully they will be doing some air dancing as we go forward here into the future, and we'll be able to start sort of clean, like in AMREV 1, right? So that we're in a situation where we break down a certain level and fall back and then harden up and get clean and pure there, and then build back from that, facing realistically the actual challenges that we've got, without all of this media obscuring of those things that are really important.
As far as I keep trying to bring it back to silver. There's so many directions I want to go to this. You had sent me something, I think it was today, that was talking about it's getting harder and harder in Europe to get silver. I think it's getting harder and harder here to get silver, from the COMEX data, from what Bank of America did to get out of the problem. Last January, they put on 1 year silver short positions on the COMEX. Well, 1 year's up now, and we're seeing Bank of America being one of the largest deliverer of silver on the COMEX in December. And that's before the year even really kicks in, where they really put the hammer down. I know the data, the WebBot data had silver at what, $600 silver or something like that. In what kind of world does that $600 silver happen? Because $600 silver would put Bank of America out of business, and that would destroy the entire economic system.
Exactly. That's the kind of world. That's why I've always maintained no one wants to live in that world, because everybody's used to and habituated to these support systems that keep their lives comfortable, although, caged, right? And constrained. And unfortunately, you're quite correct. We're going to have the bank failures. We're going to have international bank failures. We're going to have a failure of international settlements, which is where it comes the Bitcoin as a vehicle for international settlements at prices that are just too outrageous to even consider relative to dollars. And that's in our future. So $600 silver is not a good world, in my opinion, right? I actually never thought I would live to see it. And it's kind of scary that I did, because it's going to be very, very, very harsh. Because it's a situation of a global fiscal breakdown, and I've seen financial system break down when it happened in France, but I was in the safe environments of Germany with a sound Deutsche Mark and a sound US dollar at that point, so I was insulated. But I saw the chaos that took over as the French Empire coughed up its last colony with its currency, and broke down. It was an extremely shocking thing to see as a kid and to live through an experience, and it alters you forever. And unfortunately, everybody I know is going to be altered forever as we all live through this over these next couple of years. And we won't have a recovery, because there's no sound currency sitting on the outside of this except gold, silver, Bitcoin, local barter, that kind of thing, right?
I find it really interesting. I mean, I've been thinking about this and discussing it and fighting one way or the other for something that will be horrific. I don't know. I don't know what it is in me, but it just is there that I think truth and honesty in our markets. I don't think there ever has been full truth and honesty, but we can get a lot closer with cryptos, being that it's more like a blockchain. A good blockchain is a truth machine to attach to gold, silver, and commodities could assist in a world that, we're trying to get out of it, the tailspin. But at the same time, I don't see like the COMEX being in up and running in a world where we have $600 silver.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
There wouldn't be the regular exchanges up and going.
Right. So here's the situation that's actually facing us today. And that is that they decided this a few weeks back. Maybe they decided it months back, the way that they do things, but they implemented it about 3 weeks back. They started shutting off all different kinds of things in terms of access to China, to outside bondholders for all different kinds of bonds, to currencies, to shipments. They're telling their own people, you're not going to be selling this stuff overseas, find internal markets. They're setting up internal like infrastructure, the CCP is, that we would think of as like advertising councils, that sort of thing, to facilitate an internal consumer market. And they've just started hoarding everything they can in the way of energy resources and materials in a way that we have not ever seen before, especially food. So globalism is now dead, because without China, it doesn't exist. Thus, all the countries that used to produce something that surrendered that production ability to China are now in scramble mode. And this is our world. And from this world, we will either collapse our civilization or work our way out of it. And so it is that basis that you have to understand where we're going. So in that world, we're going to face a situation here in North America. All right, so that world supported the old world that allowed COMEX to exist. So China's globalization, without it, COMEX would have failed in Nixon's time in '72, right? Very rapidly, we were running into, without Volcker and the opportunity to offshore and get reduced labor costs and goods at super cheap levels, we would have had the crash then that we're going through now, and we would have gone to a trimetallic currency at the end of the '70s, and we would have had a different country entirely. But we were able to exist as they transferred our national infrastructure to China, including all of our technology and how to do it, but also the currencies and so on. And so now China's hoarded everything since the '70s, and now we have to recover. This is good and bad. We're going to have a very hard time recovering. We will be very strong when we do recover, and we will recover in a very sane and sound way in the new world. China is still existing in the old world where globalism existed, and they're going to be destroyed. The CCP and the Chinese infrastructure will be destroyed by the old world thinking at the same time as we get an ice age, and at the same time that the rest of the world, now cut adrift, radically shifts into all these different new areas as we all try local solutions, no longer globally dependent. Mm-hmm. So in that world, we will find that people will open up their own silver mines. Some guy that's mining iron for something will start filtering for silver instead of trying to sell it off somewhere in tailings where they would do that kind of refining for him and this sort of thing. So all of this stuff will become local, and we'll go back to we will move to a different form of a world. In my thinking, in the US, we're going to come across a radical situation over the course of maybe the next 18 months. There will be some level of event, and at that point, whether it's planned for now or erupts afterwards, we'll go to a trimetallic standard, but we'll start issuing gold coins. And we'll open up gold mining in the US in a very serious way, backed by energy resources that will be able to be put out by the government to do that. And so maybe they'll open up the Grand Canyon to mining and allocate areas to companies and so on and get people in there. It's going to be an entirely different world, though, for a number of years, where we try things. Many things of our things that we try will fail. but we have to try because we can't, there is no longer these old systems.
Yeah.
And so 3 weeks ago, China shut us off, and already people are saying in the silver business in India, which is minuscule relative to gold, that Chinese buyers are hitting them up every single day, and the prices are rising.
And, as far as China, I think they've been planning a hell of a lot longer than recent times, just from the ghost cities that they build. And these massive, I mean, I've seen videos of these. I mean, it's a beautiful built out city with all these, everything is there except people. Right. And there's just, I don't know if there's hundreds, there's definitely dozens of them. I mean, massive cities. China was really unique, and a lot of people didn't understand it. I was screaming about this back in, had to be 2001 when I saw, it was Janet Yellen, who's the head of the San Francisco Fed. I went to this small event where she spoke, and I asked her a question because she was saying, "Oh yeah, China, you got to move, into China." It was to investors, and I'm like, how do you see this working out in the long run for the United States? And she says, "Oh yeah, the United States will always be the most powerful." I was like, "What are you talking about?" But the other thing I noticed at the time was that the Chinese stock market had two types of shares, one type for the entire world and the other type just for Chinese citizens. So I think they've been planning this for a long time. The split from everybody else. They've built the cities. They've bifurcated their financial system. I mean, right now, Evergrande, they're paying off the local Evergrande debtors, but they aren't paying off anybody outside of China. Right.
A couple of things here. That occurred in 1968. Mao Zedong had been removed from power, and then 10 years later, he came back. He came back at the top of the Cultural Revolution after basically destroying the infrastructure that he'd built up and taking his Communist Party and stuff back after he'd been eased out. And in 1968, he made a speech where he said basically that for China to survive, they had to conquer North America. And he's talking Canada, Alaska, the 48 lower states, and Mexico. And that all the people that lived there would have to perish because China needed that land to feed the Chinese populace. And so they've been planning this since 68. And coincidentally, what happens in 68? Well, the moves with Nixon and, opening China and all of this kind of stuff. So I would agree with you on that. It's a long range plan. They've got a world of hurt because their view of the world is not realistic in many different ways, and they're breaking down on their own. But we now have to accept the consequences of Janet Yellen in the 70s and everybody else saying rah 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 outsource. In the 70s, I was standing up saying this is absurd, this is stupid, we can't do this shit. And why? Because it leads us to exactly this point where we're at right now. The good news is that we face in my opinion, the good news is that we face an existential crisis at a civilization level across all of the liberal Western republics. And that this existential crisis is it is truly the end of our civilization. Okay, so any country with a central bank other than Russia or China is now at risk of having that country collapse and dissolve in the general dissolution that's happening to our civilization, unless we all stop and change things. The change that is required is going to be unfathomable to almost everybody that is alive in these civilizations, because we have to do away with central banking in each and every country. And so we could have a central currency that would be global. We could all say Bitcoin was central currency and could be global because it can't be manipulated in and of the creation of it, right? But as long as central banks exist where you're dealing in debt instruments, the only people that will survive that are those people that are free, self-actualizing humans, right? So I will survive an encounter with an ice age, but many of the people I know will not. If the civilization goes down, that's fine. I'm tribal at that stage, right? So you see the things that's going on here. This is exactly the same thing that occurred to Athens 3 times in its history in an ancient Greece sense, when they were the empire of record for their day and had taken over from previous seafaring civilizations. They ran into silver crises and environmental crises that affected them. So money crises and environmental crises at the same time. And each and every time they were able to pull themselves out of it. But up until that last time, and then they collapsed. But each and every time, the only way they pulled themselves out of it was finding another source of silver. So we have this same thing happening throughout history in all these civilizations that face crises, and the crises always come clumped around some kind of a currency thing. Those that survive find some new source of currency resource. And so that's why I'm saying that the most likely solution for North America is to convert to a trimetallic standard based on an abundance of gold and a scarcity of silver.
So, okay, just so everybody, at least on the road, a lot of people know, this is going to be a public video. So I have long believed it wouldn't be that hard to remove Federal Reserve notes from US dollar, the constitutional dollar that gold and silver was and is. You know, whether or not we understand that, it doesn't matter. It's still in the Constitution. The Federal Reserve notes are just that, notes of IOUs from the Federal Reserve for the US dollar. And the way it doesn't take a decider to make that separation. What it takes is one of any of the large too big to fail banks to go down. And the ramifications of a domino effect affecting the customers of the next too big to fail bank and so on, would get us to a point of decision. And that point of decision would be, do we bail out the banks again, this time for, whatever they want, kind of what they're doing now, let the Federal Reserve print as much money or make as many derivatives as you choose to keep yourself afloat, or do we choose to return to a non-debt based, which means everybody's debt would be erased in Federal Reserve notes, which is, the biggest problem in the world right now on a basic level, just in the old world, is debt. Everybody's in massive amounts of debt. There's no way to pay off that debt. So that change, that shift would be massively chaotic. I get it. But at the same time, it would almost automatically reset us, a creative destruction type event, reset us so that we choose gold and silver and the good cryptocurrencies that are sound to use as money going forward, because it's either bail out all these banks and the old system and give that misallocation of funds back to the people who,
Well, okay, so you're actually talking about a couple of different events there, though. I agree with you. We're coming to that decision. Okay, we have to make that decision about the bailouts and the old banks and stuff. And I'm pegging it for February 17th. We'll come up on that decision really close, right? Really quickly. We'll start having these banks gork out their infrastructure and keel over because of what's going to happen in commercial real estate and everything else that's going to exacerbate all of this. But I see the destruction of the old banks and the recovery as two separate issues. So I do not think that it is a viable solution to do any kind of bail in or bail out. Actually, we could bail in every one of the banks and it's meaningless because we're bailing them in with dollars that have no purchasing power. Okay, so if they steal my money, they're stealing trash, right? So under the circumstances, that does not aid them. It doesn't correct the problem. So bail-ins are not going to happen. Bailouts also, for the same reason, cannot happen because the Treasury, or excuse me, the Fed can produce as many dollars as it wants, but if they have no purchasing value, what is the point of accepting them? It's very much like getting three and no effect, right? So if you get three of the needles, you still end up being able to get it transmitted, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the point? Well, so getting $1 bazillion from the Fed, if no one gives a shit about the dollars, what's the point? We're at that area now. So now I'm of the opinion that there have been people that are engaged for at least a decade in thinking about this and working out certain kinds of solutions, okay? They do not involve bank accounts and the stuff that we've got now because those are non-viable and they are all polluted by the ethos, the principle, the action and the people of the system that must fail. So all those people have to go down. We're going to have a public cleansing. Okay, we're going to have public is going to have to cleanse the body politic and the body economic of bad actors. So there will be people that will have to exit this planet in order that they may that the public need not think about them or their crimes any longer. So they'll never pay for their crimes. We just want them removed because they're a reminder of what they've done to us, just hanging them around. So that will have to occur. This is going to be very ugly for lots of people, extremely ugly. And it will change many of the people that survive at a core level of their being, just as witnesses to what we must go through in the exposure of the crimes that have been perpetrated on us. And in so doing, we will cleanse ourselves and we will be able to think clearly about things. Now, I'm of the opinion that there are people that have been thinking clearly about this for about 10 or 12 years, and that they have worked out a few things in the background that can't be implemented until the appropriate time. But and that I'm also of the opinion that these people are adults and they understand the risks, and the point at which they must do implementation has to be so close to the fire that you feel the flame and you feel some level of damage to the skin of your hand in order that you might learn. Okay. And so we're not there yet, but we may be very much closer than I suspect. And that'll be a very terrible time, and it'll last for who knows how long as all of that degrades. But during that degradation, we should be able to see some signs of like reassurance that there indeed is activity going on in a positive rebuilding kind of a sense. That's not this build back better bullshit from all of these NGO guys, that sort of thing.
I mean, what you're saying is the road to Ruta theory. I mean, that is, I've always said it, and people used to laugh me off the stage that there are good guys behind the scenes, at least since I discovered the road to Ruta stuff back in 2007. And, you got this little kid in a comic book talking about a need to go back to a gold standard and how the big people have been basically destroying everything. It's so amazing to me. But that's the other thing is, I discovered that in 2007, but it's a remake of a 1981 comic book back when they were looking to go back to a gold standard in the Reagan days. I mean, Reagan had the Gold Commission, and the Gold Commission basically came out and said, we know there's a problem. We're not going to change anything until we have to. So we'll just get our budgets in order. There's no talk of budgets getting in order anymore. There's no talk of getting the deficit down. That is not the solution. And Ruta wrote that in the sand in the first comic book, was print money to infinity and let the system collapse, soaking up all the benefits, build your roads, bridges. I mean, now they're not, though. We're on the downside now of that.
Right. So here's the thing. It goes back further than that. It goes back further than 81. It goes back to 2 weeks before November 22nd in 1963.
Is that Kennedy?
Right. And from that point on, and so people like myself are being motivated. And it doesn't affect me any longer because of my past, but a great many people are going to shed their innocence in these next few weeks. Maybe it'll take a couple of months. And
I would like to point out to everybody that when I talked to Clif, you knew it, you saw it coming, absolutely 100%. And you were able to give that warning. And we did, we were at the, I don't even remember where we were, but yes. And this is not, Clif being over exaggerating anything. Remember what life was like back before, all this insanity of the last 2 years happened. I mean, we were the innocent, and now we're like, a lot of us have seen through the mask, but the majority in California, my friends, family, they just don't see it. And it shocks me. But then again, I remember that a long time ago, I didn't see any of this stuff either.
Yeah.
And it took a little study, and it is going to take revelations on the news media and the internet such that the truth has to come out.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so you got a bunch of assholes and idiots out there that are saying, "Oh, so and so's dead," right? They hauled off Hillary. She's been arrested, and there's a clone in her place. Okay, well, what's the sense of that? All right, so think about this. Who benefits from that? We don't benefit, especially if the clone has to go off and do all these evil things to pretend to be Hillary, right? Okay, so, and if they were to arrest Hillary and put her in Guantanamo, how does the populace benefit? People do not understand that anybody that's proffering the idea that there's secret arrests and shit going on in the background and secret trials and crap, anybody saying that misses the point. None of that benefits the social order. Those will come, and they will be so public that you will not be able to escape them, because the social order must take that on board. It can't be done in secret because it aids no one.
Yep.
And so people that instantly, as soon as I hear that kind of stuff, I dismiss them. Anybody that thinks that kind of stuff is going on is in my opinion, and this is very harsh, is a low information, potentially low thinking individual. And but for certain low information, and they don't analyze the information. So that must occur, and we're getting very close to that, Guy. When stuff happens like that, people will, here in the United States, people will wake up one morning, and when that stuff occurs, and there will be troops in the street. And people in their towns will be thrown into military trucks and hauled off to military prisons to face trials. And no one will bother hiding their faces. No one will bother trying to disguise the fact that these people have been arrested. And you'll see their houses will be right now in Kazakhstan. I've got a friend of mine in Kazakhstan, a young man in his 40s. He's like 44. And in his village that he lives in, they burned down 2 houses. Just recently, like 2 days ago, they found one security guy living in a relative's house. They hauled the security guy out and threw him into the jail, threw the other guy in the jail, and burned down the relative's house for housing the security officer. And then the mayor's house has already been burned down. And they're out there looking for these people, taking their weapons away, taking all their money and their property, burning their houses down, and incarcerating them. That's coming to the United States, hopefully in a more organized fashion.
And guys, what Clif is talking about is those are the bad guys going to be taken down, right? Okay.
Correct.
Just to make that clear.
Yeah. The people are rising up.
Yeah.
And because of the internet and because of the woo of the internet and breaking through the paradigm, the people are seeing this shit and they're just organizing themselves. So you don't have to worry about it.
And I would like to remind everybody that when this truth does come out, the military will, the people within the military will be on our side. The police will be on our side.
Okay, so there, I don't know about that, right? There's a lot
of.
If
it all came out, if it all came out, which I think you have to say, you can't keep. I mean, I am one about pulling the Band-Aid.
Yeah, take my pain now.
Yeah,
I've been gouged with knives, and the first thing I do is douse it with the lidocaine and start stitching it up. I'm not going to wait for any kind of a doctor to mess with me.
Yeah, I agree, and I still have faith that in the United States it's humans. Humans know the difference between right and wrong, and when we see and are shown the true facts of how we've been abused, it will be horrifying for all human beings who are not part of it.
Okay, but here's something to understand. It's not going to go down like everybody sits down and we watch movies or something coming through the emergency broadcast system and that kind of stuff. And we watch movies for weeks and get this history of what's been going on. Because during that period of time, you're talking about the breakdown of the social order, mass arrests. But okay, so look at this. We have a corrupt judicial system at the moment. I'm told that right now that it may take 2 or 3 years after the initial acknowledgement of a filing of a suit to get the first adjudication on any material. So I could file a suit against somebody right now. I could sue Corey Good right now in my state, and he would have to fight me for 2 or 3 years before anything he put in there could be adjudicated by a judge in my state, because we're so overwhelmed. Well, a lot of judges are corrupt and they're going to be being yanked out. So our judicial system could be expected to collapse. All right. Same thing is for sure going to happen to the hospital administration staffs. They're corrupt and they're going to be yanked out and dealt with. Same thing is going to happen to legislative bodies everywhere with all of these George Soros appointees or people that he's got in power and all of the corruption there, right? And we'll yank a bunch of people out, like in Kazakhstan, when all the banks have been looted, by the way. There's nothing in the banks. Computers have been taken. A couple of the mainframes in one of the banks, that's why people are living in the banks now, is that they want to preserve the mainframes there from damage. And they're just telling other citizens, we're doing this for an examination to find out who was corrupt and so on. Here's all of the central banking records. And so the people are actually living there so that there won't be damage to these banks. We couldn't understand initially what was going on with that. But so they're going to examine and see where all the banking records lead and so on. So they're starting to do forensic level analysis. So this is a years long effort, and it's going to be chaotic for years as we go through this. People need to grasp that and start paying attention to this. So this year, if such things start going down, bear in mind the food system is going to break down just because of the people that are in the financing business for that are going to be arrested. The banks are going to fail. The people transportation, the people that finance the transportation are going to fail. We may have, shortages of fuel, all of these kind of things, as has happened in empires in the past when their currency and the social order has gone all to hell, as ours is now. And there won't be anybody coming to rescue us. So this is extremely harsh time. It's good time because the long suffering of denied pain will be over.
But it won't win overnight. It's going to take a while. Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
Oh my God. Cliff, I love talking to you and I hate talking to you at the same time.
I'm a bummer these days, Guy. We've got people around us who are very ill and stuff. So my attitude is very, very, very piss poor because my group is suffering as a result of these fucktards that I really truly wish, and I'm not really a violent person, but I wish I could confront some of these people that are way high up and at least get my anguish out. But it's never going to happen. But so I'm sorry, Bix, I am somewhat of a downer.
It's okay. I mean, we're going to have to face reality, or it faces us, or however you want to put it. We're long past the time of kicking the can down the road on all this stuff, on the financial stuff, on the health stuff, all of it. The can no longer be kicked. We're going to have to deal with it. Cliff, thank you so much for hanging out and talking to us like we're real people. And I mean, I know the Road to Ruta fans can handle reality. We might not like it, but reality is reality. And we've been down this path prior to this is a new path. I think we're going down.
Denial. Yeah, that's with me, is that I hate the denial of reality, not being able to talk about things as an adult because of constrained language, so.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck the political correctness, fuck the wokeness, all of that shit.
I agree 100%. Cliff, thank you so much for spending time with us. Hey, can people get sleep well?
The Pure Sleep is going to be back in a very short period of time. I just did the the production run sample last night, and it is glorious. There's a mid note in there now because of the way we're doing stuff in the production that didn't exist before. And it's like, whoa, this is really good. It's really good. I like it.
I like the old one, but I
had a good sleep, and I'm sleeping in furniture and stuff because of the care issues I've got with people, right? So even that, it doesn't matter. I ache a little bit, but I'm getting my sleep.
Okay, good. Well, all the best to you and Kathy and your family and everybody else. Thank you for your time, and we will hopefully see you very soon, Cliff.
Okay, we'll see you later then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.